Mark eased the apartment door open and called her name. No answer. He slipped off his shoes and walked through every room. Empty. Not a soul. He tried calling her, but her phone was sitting right there on the table. He swore under his breath and dropped onto the couch in defeat. He knew she had her episodes, but every single time felt like the first. So what am I supposed to do now? If he had no idea where she might be, her friends and parents would be even more useless. He lay back and stared at the ceiling, half hoping she'd simply materialize in the apartment by some miracle. She loved playing hide-and-seek with him. She usually warned him beforehand, sure, but that didn't mean she couldn't be tucked away somewhere right now, watching his reaction with quiet amusement. He admitted defeat and called out to her. She didn't appear. Dejected, he decided he might as well look through her phone, and that was when he noticed the small pink slip of paper lying on the table. He went over and picked it up. It had been folded. On the outside, in her neat handwriting, for Mark. He unfolded it. Inside was a long message, filling the page. He knew the handwriting immediately. He knew who liked to write letters like this. He sat down on the couch and began to read, his expression darkening with every line. Hi, Mark. I'm so sorry for doing this in a letter instead of face-to-face. I really wanted to look you in the eyes when I said this. I saw how you took care of me, how much you genuinely cared, how you were always ready to come over to support me, to help, to just sit with me and talk. I know you love me, and I want you to know, Mark, I love you too. I'm sorry again that I can't say it to you in person. I know how much you'd want to hear it that way. But it turned out you didn't know everything about me, and that's why I had to write this letter. I don't even know where to start so that you'll understand and believe me. I'm not human, or not entirely. I was born in 1961. I died in 1976. A tram hit me on a late summer evening when I was walking home. I died without ever fulfilling my one real dream. No one had ever loved me, and I wanted so badly to be loved. So I stayed even after I died. Someone had to love me before I could be free. For so long I couldn't find that person. No one can love a ghost. I don't really exist. But you could, Mark. You loved me and I loved you back. Because of you I've been set free. My dream came true. But now that I'm free, I realize I don't want it. I don't want to leave you, but I have to. That's why I couldn't say this looking into your eyes. I simply wouldn't have had time. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. I'm somewhere better. I love you so much it's unbearable, Mark. If ghosts could cry, this letter would be soaked through. I'm sorry if this doesn't make sense. I never learned how to find the right words. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. I'm sorry for everything, Mark. For what you've just learned and for what you're about to realize, I'm sorry for that too. 1,000 kisses, 1,000 times I love you. I am yours and you are mine. He finished reading with a hollow, bewildered chill settling over him. She must be having another episode. They were rare, but they happened. If she was a ghost, how had he been able to see her, talk to her, fall in love with her? He stood up and started pacing. The old Soviet parquet groaned under his feet with every step, but for some reason Mark had always liked that sound. Within a couple of minutes he could hear the neighbors downstairs banging in protest, which lifted his mood just slightly, enough to get a faint smile out of him. He didn't know what to do or where to go. Whenever she had one of these episodes, she'd disappear to some random place with no logic to it whatsoever. Finding her was impossible. All he could do was wait for her to come back on her own or for the police to turn her up. He couldn't do anything, but he always felt like doing nothing was wrong. Maybe the park. She said nature calms her down. She could have gone there, he muttered to himself, still pacing on the creaking floor. Or maybe the abandoned tram depot. Trams, did she leave anything else? He started searching the table, but there was nothing besides the pink slip with its feverish message. Then he tried the drawers, and what he found stopped him cold. A clipping from an old newspaper, something about a court hearing involving a tram driver responsible for multiple deaths. And next to it, a small photograph. Her photograph, unmistakably her. But the photo was black and white, and she was wearing a young pioneer uniform, red neckerchief and all. The hell? Mark didn't know which was worse, that things had gotten this bad or that she might actually be telling the truth. He sank back onto the couch and stared up at the ceiling again. There was a water stain up there. He hadn't noticed it before or couldn't remember noticing it. This is insane. I'd call her parents and tell them everything, but they'd just blame me for setting her off again. Same as always. How many times has that happened, actually? Who do I usually call when this starts? Who do I call at all? He tried to think. For some reason, he couldn't remember what he'd done yesterday, or the day before. He couldn't even remember what he'd had for breakfast. If I could see her, talk to her, touch her, and she's a ghost, then does that make me a ghost too? Come on. Why am I actually starting to believe this? He tried to recall time spent with family, with friends. He could only ever seem to remember time spent with her. It had always been that way. He'd always held on to the moments he'd shared with her. Before, he would have said that was just what being head over heels felt like. But now a cold feeling crept across his skin. Maybe her crazy is rubbing off on me. He got up and read the newspaper clipping again more carefully. It wasn't from the 70s, it was from the 90s. He let out a slow breath of relief. She probably found it somewhere and got obsessed with the story. That's more like it. But then he kept reading. The driver developed his taste for blood 20 years ago when he accidentally struck and killed a young schoolgirl. From that moment on, the sight of children's bodies drew this monster back again and again. Between 1976 and 1994, he committed approximately a dozen murders. Among the victims identified were the previously missing Pasha Ivlev, Mark S.H. Torkin, Vidya Vitaliev, and Sasha Nomenko. Mark didn't understand. He dropped back onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, willing her to walk in and explain everything herself, willing himself to close his eyes and open them to find the world rearranged into something bearable. As a kid, that was always what he'd done, squeeze his eyes shut and wait for everything to be different when he opened them. He tried to remember the last time he'd done that. Tried to remember anything at all, anything beyond her face and the time they'd spent together. It felt less like a year and a half and more like his entire life. A damp, cold room, a garage maybe. Why was the last time he'd squeezed his eyes shut and hoped for something better in an abandoned garage? No, that can't be right. I couldn't have. Tears ran down Mark's face. He had never wanted so badly in all his life to open his eyes and find himself somewhere else entirely. And then he felt it, gentle hands on his shoulders, warm breath at his neck, hair brushing softly against his cheek. It was her. She was holding him, pressing her lips to him, and he pressed back. You understand. You figured it out. Come with me. He didn't want to open his eyes yet, not yet, but he could feel everything, the embrace, the kiss. A clean wind moving over him, the sensation of rising. When he finally opened his eyes, there was nothing but blue sky and clouds, exactly the way he had always imagined it. I love you so much. I love you too. I am yours and you are mine.